managed to convince parts of the European Commission and Eurostat to measure the resource use in the European Union, and I will briefly introduce you to what we found out about the European resource consumption, which is quite interesting. So, as I said, the crisis prepared the ground for a new thoughtfulness, and there was also a certain readiness to talk about how we define progress and how we measure progress. And so we try to introduce a new measure of progress, which would be the ratio between welfare and resource use. So we need to decouple our resource use from welfare, therefore we need to measure how we generate GDP and how much material we require for the production of goods and services in Europe. And this is the new central indicator that should be introduced to measure progress. GDP is not sufficient anymore because it simply shows that we are becoming richer and that we accumulate more and more material, but it doesn't really tell us whether we do this in an efficient way. And if we compare the situation in Europe, if we compare the situation between the different countries, we see that the generation of welfare is based on a very different consumption of resources. For example, just to show you two extremes here in the UK manages to extract from 1 ton of resources used in the UK economy, the UK manages to extract 2,500 euro per ton of natural resources. If we take the other extreme, Bulgaria here, we see that Bulgaria manages only to create welfare of about 150 euro per ton of natural resources. If we take here the UK as a measure compared to Bulgaria, we see that a factor 17 is here between Bulgaria and the United Kingdom. This means about 17 times of the material that is used in the Bulgarian economy is wasted. Or in other words, the UK uses its natural resources in a much more efficient way. If we take the EU average as a benchmark, we see here that we have here a number of economies that still need improvement when it comes to improving their overall resource productivity. So we see here we can actually develop by putting much less stress on the environment by improving our welfare generation, by simply wasting less natural resources. And this is where we think we should invest. This is where we need to generate jobs and create the necessary impetus for a Green New Deal. We still see here, if we take the EU average as a benchmark, we still here can realize a factor 9, which means 9 times less resources could be spent in order to generate welfare. This was a European perspective. We realized there are a number of economies which waste resources more than 90% of resources in some of the European economies are wasted in a way which does not make economic sense and which is not good for the environment. But let's also take a global perspective on resource consumption. Here you will see, I will walk through this. It is a bit complicated here. Here is a comparison of the global resource consumption in the world. It's a comparison here, 1980, 2002, and the year 2020. And we see here, when we look at the global consumption of resources, that we will have about a doubling of overall resource consumption worldwide. This is mostly generated by the rapidly expanding economies in Asia. So, for example, China and India, they would like to consume as many resources as we do, as Europeans do, and this is why we have an overall absolute sharp increase of resource consumption worldwide. If we look at the kind of resources that are going to be consumed, here it's this purple shade here, it's metal ores, and we have here a 200% increase. So 2 times more metal will be produced and consumed by the worldwide economies. If we look at fossil energy carriers, we still have a rapid expansion of the consumption of fossil energy carriers compared to 1980, an increase about 81%. So any idea of a massive reduction of fossil energy carriers as it would be required in order to reduce climate change is unrealistic. If we look at the biomass consumption here worldwide, we see that we have 68% increase of biomass consumption. So 68% more trees are cut down, more ecosystems are being devastated around the globe. And if we take other non-metallic minerals, there's even a more rapid increase by about 114%. So we can say that the overall pressure on the environment will sharply increase if we do not manage to decouple our economic growth from resource consumption. From an ecological point of view, we have no idea what this means, an increase of overall resource consumption by 200%. The only thing that we know at the moment is that our resource consumption is already too high. In many areas we are over the sustainable carrying capacity of the planet, and we already know that we consume too many fossil fuels and that we have climate change occurring. We know that we have a rapid decrease of biodiversity worldwide, and this is only with our normal resource consumption that we have at the current level here of 2002 measured, but we will probably experience a massive deterioration of life support systems of the planet if we don't manage to decouple our economic development from resource consumption. These pie charts show you who is actually consuming these resources, and we see here on this dark slice here is the OECD. then we have the BRIC countries, and then here the rest of the world. And we can see here in the case of metals, for example, that we have a sharp increase in the BRIC countries, and the OECD, the percentage of the resource consumption of OECD countries will diminish relatively. In absolute terms, the OECD countries will still consume too many resources. And this is about the same picture all over when we see here the rapid increase of BRIC countries, a reduced share of OECD countries, and the rest of the world sort of is left behind. So this is why we think that we need to invest in resource productivity, not only because it makes economic sense, but because we know that we will witness a rapid deterioration of life support systems of the planet in the coming 20 to 30 years. Climate change is just the beginning, but we will have, when it comes to all resources, water consumption, biomass, metals, we will have increased scarcity and destruction. Now, we ask ourselves,